This conference will now be recorded.
Oh my. Okay. I see everybody there.
I really love the way I can record and you guys all get really quiet.
Has anybody called in this time? We've got 3 people.
No, we don't have any councilmen on the line yet.
Who's on here?
Me, this room, and Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
Mhm.
Tully Stevens is on the line.
Can everyone see me?
Councilman, will you be using the link to come in so that you can see the presentation?
I've downloaded the presentation if that's what we're talking about.
No, I believe Mr. Wolf will have a video presentation. Do you have the link that was sent to you from Mrs. Cole today?
I'm sure I do. Let me see here.
I'm just going to go to the pages over my system here.
Becky. Oh.
Okay, why is this not letting me?
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to get into this, so let me come down here. Can everyone see us?
Yes.
Okay.
You said it'd be a few minutes late. He's on his way. Afternoon, BJ.
How are you doing?
Okay, how are you doing?
Good. Running late as normal, but
Very impressive. It works.
There it is.
But you won't let me print a copy. I am going to print it from here.
Yeah, I think we've got everybody now. Council Pritchard isn't going to be able to make it.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone can see or tell at least one party. Tell me what you see on the screen now.
Just see you.
You just see me. Okay, that's not good. Just a second. All right.
Mr. Wolf, you'll need to share your screen again.
Oh, I didn't. That was the last thing I had done yet. There we go. So do you see a timeline?
See a document headed City of McAllister Water System.
We're there. We're good. I'm going to try to, everyone, just be patient. I'm going to.
Can we make it any bigger?
I'm trying
Oh, there's a picture in the picture of other attendees. And is the sound the best we're gonna get? I'll get Stephanie, we'll get sound to
There we go. Mayor Pete, is everyone ready? I see everyone in the group and I see Mr. Stevens and Stephanie. Anyone else today?
No, this is all that's coming. We're trying to increase our sound on this end and possibly expand the picture.
Thank you, ma'am. I apologize. Here it is. Usually.
Yeah.
The one on the, there it is.
Stephanie, can you touch the plus button above the 25% on the screen? Because it's a touch screen.
It is here.
Yeah,
Is that volume?
the size of the, it's the size.
Can you make
Oh.
the notes go full screen?
I wonder why.
I think he has.
I didn't have time.
And everyone.
There you go. How does that work?
That's good.
Okay.
Maybe you could get rid of that right-hand deal.
Yeah, you can have that.
It doesn't appear as though I can make the volume any louder. Are we okay with the volume?
How about the right-hand portion there, Steph? Can you get rid
Right
of
here?
that?
Which, this here? Yes, I can.
There you
There you go. Does that work?
go.
Excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're all set on this end.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. We're going to try to, we're going to look at a few things this evening that we have discussed over the last few months. We tried to put together a timeline that I think if we can address everything that the city has in front of them and the process of addressing the water system improvements, the water line replacements, the funding thereof, and everything that's associated with getting you to that point. We want to spend time on going through a timeline, and then we're also going to spend a little bit of time looking at the funding methods and the analysis that our firm MFS has put together in regards to how do you pay for approximately almost $31 million in improvements. But Pete, I would suggest that in regards to the project, that we start out with the engineers giving a brief summary of the projects and the extreme necessity, and then we can go in and look at the timeline, and then go over and look at the numbers as far as your options for funding this project. So I can turn it over to Dale or to Robert. Pete.
Okay, good. I'm not going to go through this handout, but this is what we went through July the 14th, 2020. Mayor, is there any place you want me to stand up?
Anywhere, whatever.
No, okay. As everybody recalls, we were hired to do a hydraulic model and an engineering report on the project, on the water system itself. We ended up with right almost 1 million feet of pipe is in the existing system. If you replaced every line in town, it's over $100 million. Okay. Some of the issues you have is low pressures within the system itself. Okay. You have fire flow issues, and you got a huge maintenance issue. We got with all the operators, projects that you see on the list is just the top priority as far as projects go. That list could, I think there's 28 or 29, 26, and that list could double or triple easy. Okay. This map was in the presentation itself. Everything in red is everything that's on this list and the $30 million worth. Okay. I can. That's it. You bet. When we gave the presentation, we broke it out, and there's some projects in there combined. As you can see, there's a lot of red on the north side of town because that's where the water comes from. Okay. And then it just flows throughout the town from there. The top 4 projects on the list basically deals with this area, and this is your transmission lines coming from the water plant, which is right here. Also included some pictures in here that's been taken over the time. You can see the condition of the pipe is not in very good shape. You know, it's ductile iron pipe, a lot of it. Problem with ductile iron pipe is corrosive soils, and it eats away at the pipe itself. I think there's one picture in there where we got at least 4 or 5 of them right down at the bottom of the pipe. That was down strong. Some of the mains are on top of the ground, okay? Up here at Skyline Tower, which is the first tower within the system itself, there's a T on top of the ground, 1923. Okay, so we're talking about pipe that's been in the ground for 100 years. Okay, Mayor, that's the one down strong, right there. Okay, we cut out a section of pipe on it. I didn't want to go over the report in detail again because we've already done it. Okay, but I think everybody's aware about the condition that we are as far as the system goes.
Yeah, and we've got $30 million of needs, but we've got 25 million of critical needs, don't we?
You got 30 million critical needs, yes. This list, okay, is your critical needs. Any questions?
What kind of improvement would we see by spending $30 million? If we have better fire protection, certainly.
Better fire protection. That picture you have right here, if you don't mind, I'll just show everybody right here. This picture was taken during the freeze. That is this 24-inch line that basically feeds the town. Okay. We're replacing those lines. Okay. We're replacing lines that are going across the country. If you remember right, the staff had to go walk through the woods to try to find leaks and things. We're proposing to move most of the lines next to the roads. Okay. So when you have a leak, somebody's going to drive by it and they're going to see it and they're going to report it. Okay. Nobody drives out in here. Now there is one section of the line here that will still be through the woods, but it's the dual feed. Okay. And I think one of the questions we had last time, will that provide the town with water if there was something to do with the 30th main? And for a short period of time, it would. Okay.
A couple of questions.
You bet.
The first one is, do we have an idea of how many of the breaks over the weather related incidents were in these areas? You mentioned one.
Yeah, I have not went back and took the list of all the breaks we had and compared it to what we are proposing. Okay. I have not. Most of these items like throughout the town, okay, we did have a lot of fire flow issues like around the high school itself, okay? But a lot of these things were identified by the staff as, hey, we're always fixing things here. Hey, I bet you there's 6 clamps within 50 feet here. Okay, now, I don't know how that relates to the breaks that we had during the ice storm, but we could sure, I know where they are and we can go see where the work orders are and see how many we got.
I was just curious. I figured that we would see several since these are our critical needs and they're the worst of the worst.
Right.
All right. The second question is, when we install and we put, the new valves and all the new T's and everything in, are we going to capture that into any sort of GIS system so that it makes it easier for the maintenance teams later?
Absolutely. The city has a GIS system in place now, and they're building the model. And once construction gets done, we definitely have staff to come out with their equipment and mark everyone. Okay. And we need to put a date in there, what size line it is, all of the attributes that goes along with the GIS system itself.
Councilman, we're currently, if we put in a stick of pipe, we're making sure it's correct on the GIS system. If we put in a valve, being corrected on the GIS system. Anything that we do maintenance-wise around the city is being updated constantly on the GIS system.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what's the major reason for the breaks during the cold weather?
Well, the major reason was ground shifts.
Is there a way to avoid that with the new pipe?
Well, we are going to bed 100% of the pipe we're putting in the ground with sand and granular material. What happens is you get the clays, expansive clays around the pipes, and that's what moves. And if your pipe is weak, corrosion, you can look at the picture and see how much corrosion we got. It's just going to, okay? We're putting PVC in. All of the pipe we are proposing here is going to be PVC pipe, so we don't have to worry about the hot soil that we have here in McAllister, and it will be vetted properly.
How much bedding physically?
We have a detailed, an industry standard. We usually get about 6 inches on bottom, about 6 inches on top, and, you know, about 6 or 8 inches on the side.
Have we been doing that as we've laid new pipe over the years?
Absolutely.
We haven't had any problems with that. It's work.
It's work, yeah. I mean, that's our standard. That's, everything ought to be vetted. We do get contractors come back and say, hey, we don't need, yeah, you do. We don't accept nothing else. You bed the pipe 100%.
So you're proposing that we're gonna start on the north end of town and start working our way south with replacing pipe, or you?
No, I'm not. What we did is we prioritized the list, okay?
Okay.
A lot of the work is on the transmission lines at first, okay? So that's the reason a lot of the work to start out with will be on the north end of town, okay? But this line going across here, okay? We have it number 18 on the list because we figured fire flow around the high school, the middle school itself, and some of the worst areas is more critical than that line. Okay. So it's not, we're going to work north to south. We're going to work from the highest need. And that could be fire flow, that could be transmission, that could be maintenance issues. Okay. And then we just work the list down, and we scrub this with city staff to make sure that their priorities are put in the list that we have.
So that with the list that you've got proposals here, this is not the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 list.
It is.
This is the way you're gonna do it, according to this 26. Okay.
That's correct. Now I want to say that that's a living document, okay?
Right.
Okay. If we get into another area and we said, oh man, this is really bad here, we need to bump it up on the list. We'll bump it up on the list. Of course, we'll talk to staff about it and everything. Okay. But it's a living document. There might be projects added to this list. Okay. And there might, you know, and if that's the case, something will have to drop off the backside.
How long of a project? Are we talking about 5 years or 10 years, or what are we, how long are we scattering this thing out, stretching it out?
In my original proposal, I said 6 years, okay?
Okay.
John and Alan's gonna talk a little bit more about, if we go out for funding through DWSRF, they'll want it done in 4 or 5, so we'll have to bring that in a little bit. If the city decides they want to do it in 2, we'll do it in 2, okay? My recommendation is try to keep the projects at a smaller amount so we can allow local contractors to bid on the jobs.
Right.
If I put out a $30 million job, we're not going to get.
Yeah, we're not going to get any.
We ain't going to get anybody, okay? So if you look at the project list you see, I don't have anything over $3 million.
So actually, you're going to put this list out for bid, and you're going to take the contractors that bid on these first 5 projects, so to speak, and get them started. And then after you get everything rolling, then you're going to move on to the next 5 or whatever.
And the next one, and the next one. I don't want to bid more than one project at a time, because what you will get, you know, that first project is what, 2.5 million or so?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you get a local guy that says, well, you're bidding 5. I can only afford one of them, so I'm going to pick this one here. If you don't get it, that means you don't get to bid on the other 4. So what I'm going to try to to space them out so we can get as much interest in it and the lowest cost to the city as we can.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
understand.
I assume we've already replaced some of these pipes in some of these areas, right?
We have.
We've already taken that into, we're not gonna.
This, when we put this model together, it was, I left it alone, okay? But we have been working on this, Kaimeshi Voltec, okay? We've already replaced that 16-inch line, and it's actually on the list. So it will come off of the list.
The things we've done over the last 10 years, so.
Oh, well, that's the green, okay? That's the green, that is not on our list.
So you leave the stuff we've done in the last. 10 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
Pete, I saw that when Billy Jack was asking how long of a project, you raised your hand like it was gonna be 5 years.
We got to get it done in 5 years or less.
5 or less.
And
Okay.
Mr. Wolf's going to go over that because this is going to be some of the requirements of the loans.
But if these are our critical needs, to me, sooner the better.
Absolutely.
And I understand the part about trying to keep it local. But if a large contractor bid it, I'm sure they'd come back to the local area for subcontractors. Do you think that we would get an economy of scale and actually get a better price if we did a $30 million project?
I don't.
Why?
I bid a job in Nakoma Park, and it was a $4 million job. I had to pay $52 a foot for 8-inch pipe, water pipe. I can get sewer line done for that if it's a smaller job. Yeah, that's just one example, okay? But I think the larger companies got larger overheads, and you're gonna be paying for it. That's my opinion.
With us going with PVC, all of the plumbing supply places have taken at least a 10% jump on all the PVC. How is that gonna affect us in bidding these jobs?
Well, I do, in every one of these jobs here, okay, I do have contingency money.
Okay.
Every one.
Okay,
Okay, I think if you look at the jobs as a whole, I think there's over $2.5 million in contingency.
okay.
You know,
We got a little wiggle room.
we got a little bit, you know, you can't guarantee what's gonna happen in 6 or 8
Sure.
months, but, you know, I mean, when Katrina hit, everything went out of sight, okay? But they came back down, and
How soon are you planning on starting, or where do we, or start bidding these?
I think we probably need, I think that's a good transition to Mr. Wolf. As he's gonna do a lot of explaining on some of this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you see this timeline still on the screen, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually, we're gonna basically try to go through this timeline while at the same time we'll switch over and focus on other types of data that's tied to this timeline. I'm gonna let Alan Brooks with Public Finance Law Group walk through this timeline with you, and then we'll focus, like I said, on pieces of information that I think will enlighten everyone as to what we're looking at and the cost of this project and what's reasonable based on what we know now. So I'll let Alan take over, and I can switch back over to the screen. You're
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Well, this is I'm going to give you a recap of a conversation that the mayor and Pete have already heard. We had a conversation with them earlier today. John and I have been having conversations with both the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ. They're heavily involved in the drinking water SRF program, which is the loan program we're looking at for financing this project. We've also been in conversations with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. We have two issues we have to work through with the DEQ and the Water Board. One is what are the minimum requirements that DEQ is going to have to let us close of financing and how much are they willing to let us close on? Because at the point in time that we're able to close the financing, that's when we're able to set the interest rate. All of this conversation is driven by the fact that we are in an increasing interest rate environment as of the last 60 days or so. Having said that, we're still at very, very attractive rates. We're not at all-time US lows, but we're still in close proximity to all-time lows in interest rates. There's a fair amount of thought out there that interest rates could be rising. We've already seen rates coming up over about the last 60 days or so. A lot of that relates to the fact that there's speculation as COVID comes in check, the economy will improve. That in and of itself will probably create some inflationary pressure, which tends to drive up interest rates. Couple that with the fact that there's been a significant amount of money that is being pumped into the economy right now by the federal government with stimulus or recovery legislation. Those two things together are causing a lot of people to believe that interest rates will go up and continue to go up. And again, we're seeing some of that already. So our goal is to get the interest rate established, set for as much of this money as quickly as we can. Again, in round numbers, we're talking about $30 million in borrowing. The conversations we had with the Department of Environmental Quality related to how much of that will they let us close as one loan. They're not going to let us close on the full $30 million that would be, the construction on which would be scattered out over 5 years. But they did agree in a conversation that we had yesterday that they would be willing, under some circumstances, and we're going to talk about that, to let us close on 21 of the $30 million sometime later this year. The things that we have to do to get there, and this kind of goes back to the timeline that John had up on, is it still up on their screen?
Yeah, they're looking at this right now. Let me go back over to that.
Okay, he's going to go back to the screen with the timeline on it. Probably tomorrow, 26th, we're going to submit a letter to the Department of Environmental Quality asking them to be placed on their priority list for $30 million. That basically just gets us in their system, in their queue. And the other thing it does is at that point, they assign a project engineer to our project. The conversation that we had yesterday with DEQ, they indicated that they were going to provide an engineer that we're all familiar with to work on this project. We were delighted with the engineer they selected. We want to get this letter in quickly so we can get that engineer assigned before he gets busy on something else and they change their mind. Having the right engineer on the project from DEQ versus the wrong engineer on the project at DEQ can save us a huge amount of heartache. Dale, would you agree to that?
Yes, sir.
So get the letter in tomorrow, get the engineer assigned. The other thing that we're working on, and Dale is already, and I say Dale / Robert, okay? I'll keep saying you both at the same time, have already submitted a draft of what's called a categorical exclusion request. Let me explain that. These projects, because they're funded through the Drinking Water SRF program, and that involves the use of federal dollars, they have to meet various environmental requirements. If we had to do a full-blown environmental review, we could be in that process for 4 to 6 months. Based upon the preliminary conversation with the Water Board yesterday, and based upon our collective experience, it was concluded that this project should qualify for a waiver of the environmental requirements. Basically, we send them in a form that's filled out describing the project. We're going to send a map of the entire water distribution system, transmission and distribution system, and they are going to determine that we can move forward without a full-blown environmental review on any of the water system in the city. that's positive from the standpoint, we'll save that time, we'll save that money. We can get to closing quicker, which is, again, when we set our interest rate. So those two things should happen literally in the next day or two. The next thing we talked about is a requirement before we can issue this debt. There's going to be an election required. The voters of the city of McAllister are going to have to approve letting us borrow this money. What we talked about in our conversation with the mayor and Pete this morning would be to come to the council on April 27th at a regular meeting. And the first item we have out there is we would have a formal resolution authorizing professional services agreements, authorizing the loan application to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. But most importantly, we would adopt the city documentation that would allow us to go to the voters and ask for their approval at the July 13th, 2021 election date. Everybody with me so far?
We're good.
Assuming the voters approve this on July 13th, in early August, Municipal Finance Services will start working on that application in June, but we would submit that application to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board in August. We would expect to have a permit to construct on the first tranche of projects. I think right now we think that's going to be basically 4 transmission line projects. Correct me if I'm misstating that, Dale or Robert. But one of the things we agreed with the DEQ yesterday is that before they would let us close, they would want those first 4 projects submitted as a whole and a permit to construct issued. And they're going to want one of those 4 projects for you to have bids in hand. So the idea would be we would get the permit to construct early September. We would bid out the first project and have those bids in hand early October. We would have the Oklahoma Water Resources Board approve this loan at their monthly meeting. That would be third Tuesday in October as of right now. And we would hopefully set the interest rate and close the loan before the end of October of 2021. Again, that would be on $21 million roughly of funding. Thought process that we would go back to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board in calendar year 2022 with the remaining roughly $10 million in projects, and we would fund those in 2022, again, whatever interest rates are at that point in time. Our goal is to get that 21 million is the 2021 million is the largest amount, one, that the Oklahoma Water Resources Board has in available funds for calendar year 2021. 2, it's as much as DEQ is going to let us close on without coming back with an additional round of projects. I went through that pretty fast. I would be happy to answer questions on the schedule or why we're doing it the way we're doing it.
Everybody's good.
Okay, a couple things that we covered a lot in this timeline. I just want to hit some of the, I think, graphics that address timing, why this particular type of financing vehicle, what the market has done. So just won't drag you through a lot of charts and graphs, but I do at least want to address some areas that Mr. Brooks was alluding to. Obviously, as we looked at programs or financing alternatives for the city, when it comes to water sewer type projects, in most circumstances, depending on whatever obstacles you have, such as environmental issues, which in this case, as Alan had stated, we're looking to get a categorical exclusion or a waiver from the environmental review so we can move through this very quickly compared to the alternative of having full environmental review. And the area that I want to focus on real quick, if you can see the graphic, it's hard to see, but when we began discussing this with the city staff, all the way back to late fall early winter, we have this graphic here that shows the drinking water program, which is for water projects, versus the clean water. The blue, we were at this area approximately just a little bit over. The average rate on this would be about a 1.81% back on December 10th, for instance. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. We have had a spike based on everything that Alan had addressed regarding potential growth, adjustment for the economy improving, and pressure that would result in some inflationary issues. So that typically drives rates up. And we've gone from where we were close to 180, 185 on the rate. Pardon me. Okay, there you go.
They could only see the top half.
Oh, they can only, is that what he said?
Yeah.
Okay, can you see that graphic?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys. Okay, so we've had a little bit of bump up in rates, and we had a little downturn the last couple days. But once again, this program, because it's federally subsidized, is 70 to 80% of what market rates are. So when you look at your alternatives, this is a slam dunk as far as lowest interest rate you're going to get on this type of project that's out there. And it is a drawdown line of credit type program. So you only pay interest on the dollars that you draw down. Each and every draw you make through the whole construction process, you only pay interest on that draw for the time that draw is outstanding. So in the market today, where you're earning very little on your investments, if you were to go out and borrow money and have it put into a bank and invest those dollars, you get very little return, and then you in turn be paying the interest rate on the debt. This is a more efficient program in that you only pay for what you draw down. Our reason for the timeline and its implicit expediency is to get to the market before this jump gets much higher. And for every basis point that the market goes up, it costs you around $32,000 over a 30-year loan period. And so 1 basis point is 1/100th of a percent. And so if you went up 50 basis points, which would be 0.5%, then we're talking $1 million. It would cost you $1.5 million more in interest. So the sooner we get out, get into the market, get this loan to the board, get it closed, lock in the interest rate, the better. Hopefully, knock on wood, the better rate we get, and the lower impact on your citizens as utility customers within the community. So I at least wanted to address that the reason for the expediency outside of you guys are probably all ready to move and get ready to move forward on this. So that's one schedule real quick. I wanted to show one other. Any questions and any part of what I just went over?
No one's raising their hand, so go ahead.
Okay, some of you, if not all of you, have seen this schedule before, but what this addresses, as Alan had alluded to, that we're looking at basically breaking this out into 2 separate loans. We rounded for just discussion's sake 21 million now and not 9 to 10 million in 22. We broke this out in this analysis to do one thing. It is to determine how you're going to pay for the cost of $30 to $31 million in projects and total costs. How are you going to address that? And where are the interest rates at now? And who's going to pay for what as far as your different customer classes? And what we have here that I'm going to go through, I'll stop answering any questions you may have. But where we're at today.
Hold on a second.
Go ahead.
John,
Can you?
Is there somewhere where we can go and get these hard copies?
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah.
Well, we made some slight changes to this. I can send these to you. Is it hard to read?
It's changed, but close.
Okay.
It won't be exactly what's up there, but it's gonna, you're at least gonna be able to see what he's.
John,
Yeah.
this is Cully Stevens. Is there a, by chance, when we get done with this, could you email us this presentation as well, please?
We will. We'll send that to you.
Thank you.
Is what you're looking at right now, is that any easier to read, or is it just too small and cut off?
It's easy for me to read on the computer, but I'm not in the room right now, so.
You guys move that? It's good. It's good with us.
Okay, I just did not want to proceed and go through too much more detail if you have a hard time reading this. As I was stating before, as we look at the first project, right now we're looking at an estimated loan amount of around 20.7 million. Today's interest rate, if you were to close it today, would be a 2.10% fixed for 30 years. And the annual payment would average about $937,000 a year. Once again, you only pay interest on what you draw down. The way the program's set up is when you close the loan, you pay interest on your draws until your construction projects are complete that are under that loan, that the loan amount that's approved by the Water Resources Board, and then you start paying back principal within a year of the time you finish the project. We typically set up our clients to start paying back principal on the note, paying down on the note, within 6 months of the estimated completion date that your engineer gives to us on completing all the projects in that $21 million project grouping. And so what I want you to focus on, I'm scrolling down, is that we broke out your actual customer base into three different groupings. One, your actual water districts, and then your Department of Corrections and Buried Plastics, and everyone else as to their actual percentage of the loans, or in this case, the single loan, the 21 million, what would actually be paid back, and who would cover what portion based on their demand on the system. And what we had calculated looking at the last two fiscal years, through to fiscal year in 19 and fiscal year 20, year in 20, is the percentages you see here represent the demand that those groupings placed as far as water consumption demand on your system as a whole compared to total consumption citywide. And so in this analysis, which is this is a model, this is our approach at trying to equitably distribute the cost of paying back this project. About 28% of this of your volume usage average over the last couple of years have come from water districts, and about 14% from the prison and from buried plastic. So about 42% of your volume were those entities. And so we looked at how should the $1.4 million, that is the estimated, $1.4 million is the actual estimated annual debt payments based on a 2.1% borrowing $20,786,000, what that is today. And so we broke that out and we distributed among the other customers what their representative share should be based on the water districts and then DOC and buried plastics, that subtracting that from total usage, which leaves about 57% that the other customers actually demand on your system, at least over the last two full fiscal years. So we believe that's the portion that they should actually pay of a $937,000 annual payment for 30 years. And so that's the numbers you see here. Hopefully you can see these. This is the actual loan payment that would be covered under the very first loan for 20.7 million. What we wanted to look at is how do we cover that additional demand? And we addressed this in 3 phases as an option. And as you can see down below here, hopefully you can see this, that we looked at increasing your rates, certainly as an option to pay for this cost, but we wanted to keep your base charge increases to a minimum to reduce the impact on your fixed income type of elderly customers and put more of the increase on the volumetric charge. This is just one option. The model's created, we can increase your base or your volumetric charge any way you want to direct us to, but we believe this was fair, and we compared the increase in your rates to where you would be after the rates increases went into place. We compared where you would be once you got out to phase 3, where you increased from $12 to $16 on base and from $582 to $720 on volumetric. At that type of breakout between base and volumetric increases, we compared you to other communities of similar demographics, and you fared favorably. And we're going to jump over to that here in a second. But we actually
John, can I ask you a quick question? This is Cully again. This model doesn't take into account capturing any water loss, correct? This is just on what we've actually been using the last couple of years.
Correct. It's
Okay.
very conservative, only the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And I mean, it's a good point that everything we have here, we believe is conservative. I think the biggest variable that we have is the interest rate. And that's why we want to get to the market or get to close this as soon as possible. You know, we assumed almost a $21 million first loan. If we come back, hopefully in 22 with the second loan, I've increased that to 2.5 just to address what Alan had mentioned before. Don't know if we'll be in this 210 range, you know, a year plus out from today. But we wanted to use conservative numbers to see what it would take in a rate increase. If you looked at a utility rate increase solely, what it would take on your customers in order for you to be able to cover the debt payments on borrowing that amount of money over the next 30 years. And this particular graphic just breaks down what the customer that has a minimum use customer all the way up to a 10,000 gallon customer, how much their actual rates will increase based on this analysis. And so what we were focused on is how do we raise $808,411 at least. That's the pay on the first loan and the second loan. How do we raise $808,000? And this was one option, obviously, to increase your utility rates. It's an option that makes sense. You're charging for water usage, and so you're doing water system improvement. So let's look at what you're charging water-wise, and this is the most logical option. But we also look, I guess it's in the eyes of the beholder what's logical. We also looked at, as an alternative, what other direction does the city have to go as far as paying for this? And you certainly can look at increasing your existing sales tax. And I wanted to show what, based on sales tax collections, and I think what I saw, Tony and Pete, that you were about 0.5% higher for the first 9 months of this year versus last year when you got your check in March. So the figures I have here are probably safe. If you were to look at a sales tax or a portion of any of the numbers I provided here, if you 0.25% sales tax increase based on your collection pattern you had last year. We're in COVID. You've kind of held in there this year. Where we would look at almost $1 million, 991,000 that could be available from an additional 0.25% sales tax. That obviously raises more than you need for $818,000 that you would need to help fund this project, along with what the water districts and those large customers are already paying and what their rates went up to last September. And this is just, I wanted to put this before you so that you could look at various options, but that's, let me see here. I think because, I mean, this is quite detailed, and everyone, I apologize what you cannot see. But what we wanted to do is to put this in front of you and then entertain any discussion as to the feelings of the governing body as to do you feel comfortable. You can certainly direct Pete to have us look at raising rates under a different philosophy. We just felt if we raise utility rates, water rates to pay for this, let's come up a way that accomplishes what we need, but not a too heavy burden on your fixed rate customers. But like I said, the model's created. We can change this and move whatever direction you would like us to. So I want to stop and answer any questions anyone has in regards to paying for, to summarize, paying for the cost of financing $31 million for 30 years. Once again, understanding that we're doing this under a program that's 70 to 80% of market. So as much as you look at the cost of this, it is the lowest financing program available.
John, could you run a model for us that has an 1/8% sales tax increase and then the balance covered by water rate increase?
Certainly. Do you want me to run that now?
Oh, you don't have to. You can get it too.
I didn't think you wanted it now. I'm sorry. I heard a pause and I thought everybody was waiting. We can't see you because we have our screen pulled out. I apologize.
You started moving things around on the screen. I thought you were doing it now. Does anybody else have any questions? Everybody's clear on what it is. We already, from the water districts, are paying 28% of what the entire cost would be. So the difference would be made up in whatever manner we chose to pay for it.
I'm a little murky on the rationale behind this, but he just explained to you later.
Okay.
I'm not gonna hold up anything now.
Well, doesn't seem to be any questions.
Well, then, Mayor, I guess to recap, we'll plan to be at your meeting on April 27th, correct? Any questions about calling the election that day? Good evening.
Does anybody have any issues with calling the April 27th election?
For July the 13th.
No, everybody's in.
Yeah, John will kind of refine his numbers a little bit, and we'll use an approved amount of not to exceed. It'll probably be 31, 32 million ultimately.
It's going up. We better get this thing done.
I don't know if you heard Pete or not. He said you keep creeping this up $1 million every once in a while.
But not 32.
31, 30, roughly.
It'll be less than 31.
What percent of the job cost is related to the pipe, would you guess?
As far as the materials cost, I'm gonna say it's probably Which say, Robert, 20%?
About 20. Your labor and equipment, you're over here. Petroleum was gonna be going up, right?
And we kind of talked about that as well, that we've seen, he mentioned Katrina, and we've seen, we just came from record low prices on PVC. Right now, we're seeing a spike, and oil prices are up right now, but when we're bidding this project, whatever's on the list on year 3, we may be back at an all-time low. You know, so that we've seen it through our careers where those oil prices affect PVC prices. And those storms, actually, Texas storms really took a hit on the fiberglass and resin industry, and you're seeing a big spike in pipe prices for PVC because of that February storm in Texas.
Was it, anybody got any other questions for John or Alan?
I think what we'll do, first part of next week is we will send out all the summaries and just kind of recap how all of this is going to play out and the things that have to happen when they need to happen. If you guys have any questions, let me know. We can sit down, we can discuss this, we can get John on the phone. You can do anything that you want. Just, you got to let me know and we'll take care of any questions.
Pete, I've got some questions. You knew I would. Dale, do you guys have any kind of projections on when we replace this pipe? Just assuming we go ahead with this project and do it, how much of that water loss that we're experiencing right now we could capture back?
If you look at the amount of pipe that we are replacing, okay, I think we calculated what's about 20% of the pipe out there. About 20% of the pipe out there we are replacing. So if you take the water loss and you just cut that in half, it's just a guess, okay? But I would say that you would have at least about a 10% decrease in your water loss. It could be more, it could be less.
What does that equate to in dollars?
What does that equate to in what? I'm sorry?
In dollars for and what we're charging, then we can capture back.
I don't know, but
Our chemical costs on an annual basis with Infomark is about $330,000 a year. So that's 10% less water that you're treating. So you're talking about $33,000 approximately.
I've got some more questions about that, but I'm not going to keep us any longer. I'll email them to you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it, everybody.
I forgot, I actually have a question Councilman Pritchard had sent to me, and he was asking about charging for the cost to deliver, basically, by where you're located. And I assume he's talking about the industrial park or the rural districts or something like that, being farther away from the system and having them pay more because of that. Have you heard of anything, anywhere doing anything at all like that?
Well, from our end, no. I mean, Dale, you, Robert might address, we're not aware of a system that's sophisticated to determine a cost allocation based on water from its source to its destination. Is that what you're speaking of, Mayor?
That's what the question seems to read, yes.
Okay.
I know some gas companies charge a transportation fee to use their pipeline, and it's a dollar per cubic feet of consumption that you use. That's how we're charged on our gas out there. We pay for the gas and then we pay for the transportation of the gas, which covers the maintenance cost of the pipeline. I've not heard of it being done for potable water though.
They wheel it with electricity also. They wheel it from other states, and then there's a transportation charge on it, just like you're talking about with gas. But I've never heard of anything to do with water.
Okay. I told him I'd ask the question. think that covers everything. Thank you, guys. They left. They left.
You there, John?
There's some computer screen still on.
Okay, goodbye.
Something. Can't hear us.
Say something bad about it.
Stephanie, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, are they still logged in?
Shows them, it's very nice there, 4 people.
They appear to be off.
Okay, I think we're done. I'll call
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
them. Thank you, Stephanie.
You can adjourn the meeting, Mayor.
You turn the mic off anyway.
Be here, so start working on the election documents, start working on everything so that we can get it prepared, okay?
Oh, yeah. Blending in with the fight.
Yes, yes, we do. That's what I like. Camouflage.
Oh, I will. Okay? Okay, bye. Okay, they're gonna start preparing everything for the meeting on April the 27th. On April the 13th, we're gonna need to bring the engineering documents forward so that we can get those projects shelf ready. We're gonna have to authorize about $370,000 worth of engineering for the first 4 projects in order to have them ready and permitted by September. Even if the worst case scenario that we don't get funding for this, those projects are still the 4 most critical, and they'll be ready to go on the shelf while we get funding one at a time. We pull them off the shelf and we go. So, but we can't miss a beat on this. And so on April the 13th, we'll be bringing that request forward. Okay, then on the 24th, we'll call the election for June the 13th. And they're gonna start working on the applications right now with OWRB. And we're just we've got to move forward.
And we've got to settle the election.
Yeah, everybody has to be on the same page. So we need to get everybody's questions answered so that we can talk to the public, because the public's gonna call each one of you guys.
And you're gonna be in charge of marketing the election.
We're gonna work with them very closely, and Stephanie.
And we'll follow the same path we did on the half cent infrastructure.
Yeah.
I'll do town halls and all that.
Do any of y'all track the City of Falls Facebook page?
No, what's going on?
Y'all need to look at it. About every week, they have what they're doing to their water system with pictures and photos. They're doing the best PR job you could imagine as far as getting it out to their, and really all you see is positive comments on there from the, it is really taking root over there, and they're moving things along. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with what they've accomplished in the last 6-8 months. The city you follow.
If you get a chance, take a look at the city of Ada. Ada's doing 60-second videos with Public Works and then all the projects that they're doing all around town and everything. And the people that are in charge of those projects are the ones that are talking to them in layman's terms. And when we look at it, there was what, 50 of them out there?
There's several.
They're doing them constantly. And so we're trying to mimic that going forward also. But yeah, we'll take a look at you follow and see what's going on.
Their Facebook page is phenomenal.
It is.
But they also don't have, they have a different response from their citizens than we've experienced in the past.
We had an interesting conversation with a marketing firm. And Stephanie told them, before you start talking to us, you go out and look at the comments on the city of McAllister. Look what we're dealing with. And they're basically, they came back and said, oh, shit.
We're still on.
But anyway, they took a look at it.
Well, that's what they said. That's what they said.
Couldn't believe what the comments were and everything. And so we're gonna be working on a marketing campaign also.
The question is, are we all fundamentally for this? That we need to do it, how we do it, we may have some differences on, but we do all agree we need to do this.
To me, we're past the point of needing to do it.
Because a big part of the sale will be us being all pushing it and all being united on it. So if there's anybody has any questions or any issues with it, let's get them out and get them taken care of before it becomes a problem. You know, instead of coming up on the 27th and somebody saying, well, I don't like the way this is, let's try to get that all of the bumps removed as we possibly can. All right, and I guess unless anybody's got anything else, to take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Smith, second Councilman Lopez. Any discussion?
Troy, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Boatright?
Yes.
Stevens is no longer. Cox?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. No, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
You can.
We're ready? We're ready.